Flame me out, Hotman! So we're in a new environment today because I want to do something different. Usually, if you're new to this channel, what I usually do is just talk about books. Because Legend of Korra is coming on US Netflix in a few days from now, I decided to tier rank the Avatar: The Last Airbender characters because I am still obsessing with this show. It was my obsession in middle school, and now that it's on Netflix, I am obsessing over it all over again. So I thought it would be fun to do this because what I originally wanted to do was record my reactions to Legend of Korra, but although I've never seen it before, I've read and accidentally seen so many spoilers that I just feel like my reaction wouldn't be good because I already know what's coming. So I thought I would make up for it by doing a tier ranking of the original Avatar characters, and then when I finish binge watching Legend of Korra, because I know I'm going to finish it in a few days, I'll tier rank those characters as well. So let's just jump right into it. So my 5 rankings, I have renamed them all rather than just leaving the original letters. My first one is my Fire Flames for Thee, which I got from the episode The Blind Bandit. It was one of Toph's opponents. I forgot what his name was, but he was the Fire Nation guy. So that's what he said, and that's where I got the quote from. So that tier is going to be my God tier. My next one is Let's Go on a Life-Changing Field Trip, and I'm using this for the great characters. Then I'd have Tea with You, which is for the good characters. Am I Projecting? Which would make more sense once I get to the specific character I have in mind for that. And then the last one, for the characters I just don't like, are You're All Banished, Goodbye, but you have to read that in a certain voice.
You're all banished.
But
Goodbye.
So we're just gonna jump right into it. Should I just do this in order of the characters? No, I'll start with this guy, because the first 3 I kind of have to think about. But this guy, I don't even know his name. Honestly, I forgot he existed until this tier maker thing. I remember the episode now that I'm looking at him, so usually if I think a character's forgettable, I would put them in the last tier. But he was a good person, so I feel bad for doing that. But because he's forgettable, I don't want to put him in the good tier. So I'm just going to put him in Am I Projecting? Next is the Cabbage Man. I'd have tea with him. I felt bad for him. When I was younger, I low-key thought he was annoying. And I know he's the meme of the fandom. But I'm you need to stop screaming and stop freaking out. But now that I'm older, I'm wow, yeah, kids can kind of suck. I feel that, man. Let's do Combustion Man, or Sparky Boom Man. His design is really, really cool, but he got taken out by a boomerang, so he's a weak-ass bitch. He's going into the bottom. The Sandman guy. My screen is kind of small, so I can't make out which specific one it is, but because they stole Appa, he's banished. Macchiazzo. Okay, so I want to have tea with him. He's just a good character to me because, first of all, he's such a good guy. He's a good guy to me because, first of all, he's Aang's father figure, but also what we know about the air nomads is that they're not allowed to have these earthly possessions, and they told Macchiazzo oh, we feel you're too attached to Aang, so that's why we're sending Aang away, and just the fact he's I'm not gonna let you do that. And I also read that originally Momo was supposed to be Macchiazzo reincarnated. So that's kind of become my headcanon now. It's not actually canon because they scrapped the idea, but I wish they didn't. I think that would have been really cool. Okay, let's talk about Aang. I really like Aang. He is a cute 12-year-old with that cute crooked smile that we all see. He's not my favorite character. He's not in my top 5 in the slightest, but I think he just had way too much put on his shoulders, and when you see him get angry, it's justifiable. He's allowed to get angry, and I think that anger is a part of his character that people kind of forget about, because yeah, he is this cute goofy kid who wants to, everything he does is just nice. He wouldn't even kill the Fire Lord. But I think we should talk about how he handles his anger, because we see in episode 3 of book 1 that when he gets angry, he automatically goes into the Avatar state. And then when we saw in Appa's Lost Days how he just, he freaked out. It was understandable, but he just freaked out. But at 12 years old, he was able to learn how to fight that anger and learn how to control it. We see in the last episode, he pushed away the Avatar state so he can go back as normal Aang and talk to Ozai the way he did. And that's admirable. I don't know, he seems like a goofy kid and very knowledgeable. In the first episode, he's always oh, I went here, or I went there, because, it helps that he's a nomad. So I would go on a life-changing field trip with him. So next is Appa. I would die for Appa. I cried during Appa's Lost Days. And he's a really chill animal, so I'd have tea with him. So I'm going to talk about Zuko next, because I feel in order to talk about, because Azula's next on the list, but in order to talk about her, I need to talk about Zuko, because they are my 2 favorite characters of all time in this show. In order for me to describe how I like them, I have to talk about their character arcs. So Zuko. Book 1, we meet him, he is angry, he doesn't know how, he kind of knows, he knows how to firebend, but he's not some master. He's uncontrolled. He throws tantrums. And admittedly, when I first watched the show, I was very, very young when I first watched the show. I was about 10-ish. Admittedly, I didn't like Zuko in early season 1. And plus, he was the villain, and at that age, like at 10 years old, you know how in children's shows there's a very concrete definition of good versus bad, like the good character versus the villain. So I'm like, yeah, he's the villain, like fuck Zuko, I hate him. And then you see the episode how he got his scar, and that's when I was like, oh, his background's actually like really sad. I personally think he has the best redemption arc I've ever seen on TV, and one of the best I've ever seen in fiction in general, and I think the reason that worked so well is because he did betray Uncle Iroh and go back to the Fire Nation, because I feel like he had to be there for himself to actually truly see what he wanted. And I remember like feeling so bad for him that the gang wouldn't accept him right away, especially Katara, because like, and you know, you can't blame them because we saw his development, they didn't. Now that I'm older, I actually like how they didn't accept him right away. Like, he had to go on these field trips with them and prove to them that he is worthy. I guess it's the Agni Kai too, because as I said, we see in book 1, he is so uncontrolled with his firebending and is so sloppy. And then in book 2, we see Uncle Iroh give him lessons. And in book 3, but whereas Azula was going, you know, crazy, and I'll get to that when I talk about her character, Zuko's was controlled. We saw that while Azula was sporadic, Zuko wasn't. He stayed in one spot, which is everything Uncle Iroh taught him. So Zuko and Azula's Agni Kai is my favorite scene in this whole show, and I have no words to describe how beautiful that scene is, how beautifully tragic, I should say, because it's just a heartbreaking scene, and it gets me. So yeah, we're gonna put him in the top tier, my fire flames for thee, because it does. So next, I want to talk about Azula. Azula is one of my favorite characters in this show. She is my favorite villain of all time, and I want to specify villain and not person. She's a very shitty person. She is someone who did shitty crimes and really needs to face the consequences. But we all talk about Zuko's redemption arc and how great it was, because it was great. But we don't talk about Azula's de-evolution and how, like, scary it was almost. So in order to talk about this cohesively, I'm going to start from the beginning of Azula's character and make our way to the end of the show. But when we're first introduced to her, obviously she loves perfection, and another thing about her was that she wasn't bad for the sake of being bad. She actually had everything planned out for a reason. All her actions were clearly explained. Shitty, but from a villain's point of view, it was pretty clear why she did them. And I have to admit, in the Crossroads of Destiny, how that ended was something I've never seen before when I was that young, because Aang's powering up. And in superhero movies, whenever a superhero is powering up, the villains just stand there. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, why don't you just attack now? And that's what I was expecting when I was first watching the Crossroads of Destiny. I'm like, he's gonna power up, everything's gonna be fine. But then Azula went all Danny DeVito on him. And yeah, morally, that's really, really shitty. But from a villain's perspective, that was really smart of her. She saw her opportunity and just took it. If you were to ask me at the end of season 2, after my first watch, if I pity Azula, I would tell you, as much of a badass that she is, I don't pity her at all. She's pure evil. Then we get to the beach episode in book 3. If you were to ask me again, I would repeat the beginning, but I would hesitate on calling her pure evil. She definitely has a mean streak, but I would hesitate on calling her pure evil just because of what she said about her mom struck a chord with me, because she said, oh, I don't care, but you could see on the facial expression that she did. So I was like, oh, some things are kind of clicking here. So I talked, like, as I said with Zuko in season 1, like when we were first introduced to him, I was like, fuck this guy. But then we saw the scene where Ozai burns his face off, and I was like, maybe my opinion is going to change about this guy. That's how I felt about Azula in the beach after watching that. Then we get to the mirror scene where she hallucinates her mom. I still remember the chills I got from watching that scene the first time. My interpretation of it, and I understand everyone's interpretations are different, but my interpretation of that scene was that, considering it was all in Azula's head, part of her had to know what she was doing was wrong. I'd imagine for anyone, when the world you know is crashing down at you, it's scary. So that's why, I'm assuming that's why she pushed it aside. And then we see her mental breakdown in the Agni Kai, and her screaming sent chills up my spine. And that's when I truly started pitying her. Again, not excusing her actions, because honestly, if it wasn't for her mental breakdown scene, I would never have pitied her. It's that scene that made me be like, okay, you're shitty, but I still feel bad for you at the same time. Like, she introduced me to the concept of the sympathetic antagonist, and I just thought that was so mind-boggling to see at that age, because She was the first villain whose actions were clearly explained to me, because I've always had a fascination of why people do the things they do, especially bad people, because it's like, me personally, there's just some things where I cannot imagine doing, and I cannot imagine why people would do them. So it's like, why? Like, why are you doing the things you do? I want them explained to me, and I think it's important to learn why, villains and just bad people in general commit their actions, because then it would help us learn from that and possibly avoid future altercations like that. And bringing it back to Zuko, her and Zuko's Agni Kai and how they contrast each other, we saw her go from this perfect child to this unstable person, and we saw her fighting delicate and controlled two-finger thing to the fist. And while Zuko was standing in place, she was moving around everywhere she could. And while Zuko had his breathing under control, she didn't. They showed multiple scenes where she's kind of like gasping for air. Her and Zuko's story, like that Agni Kai, the thing with the music, it really drives home the fact that this is a fight between two teenage siblings. It is a duel that should never have happened. We're watching two children ready to kill each other, and there's nothing heroic about that. I think that's so sad. I feel like Azula's character development is like a parallel to like the gifted child arc we see in real life, whereas gifted children, they're perfect when they're younger, they know what they're doing, and then the older we get, the more depressed we get, which, because of relatable content. And I think it says something that more than a decade after the show ended, I'm still seeing long discussions about her character. We all have our fan theories, and I feel like we're all getting to the point where like, Bright would come out and say, like, hey, we weren't thinking that deeply about it. Then our overactive imaginations are like, bet. Over a decade later, we still talk about the psyche of a 14-year-old villain. So, you know what? Here we go. She's in my top tier, my fire flames for thee. Also, I'm just realizing the quote is not my fire flames for thee. It's actually my fire burns for thee. So we're gonna fix that. That's embarrassing. Do I have the quote wrong? I feel like I need to look it up now.
My flame burns for thee.
Okay, so next is Hakoda, Sokka and Katara's dad. We don't get to know a lot about him, but he's a good man, so I'll have tea with him. Hama! Okay, this woman. She's banished. I'm just gonna admit it, she's banished. Next is my boy Haru. He is such a good boy. He's not great just because we don't get to know a lot about him. So I'm going to have tea with him. Next is Uncle Iroh, and I have no words. So before we begin, he's one of my top 3 favorite characters, which I think is a basic answer. I'm sure I'm not alone in this at all. Another reason I love him so much is because of his character development as well. Not only is he the uncle that gives us the philosophical advice we all need, not only does he see the good in everyone, it's just I'm so interested about his backstory, because the show made it very clear he was not particularly a good person before Lu Ten died. He was a ruthless general, and considering it was the siege of Ba Sing Se, we can assume that people were dying on both sides, not just his son. And in the letters that Zuko and Azula's mom reads, like, clearly he was rooting for the Fire Nation. But like, we don't think of him like that because we met him after his redemption. I would love for him to have like his own comic from like birth, and it takes place from birth to death, so we can see his backstory. From what I read, and it was on like the wiki page, and I don't know how true those are when it comes to like the trivia facts, so probably take this with a grain of salt, but they had an episode dedicated to his life on the storyboard, but then they scrapped it, which I kind of understand because I feel like seeing too many redemption arcs in one show would take away from the main one, which was Zuko's. His contrast with his brother Ozai, Zuko talked back to Ozai, and Ozai's response was to burn his face off and send him away from the Fire Nation. Zuko stabbed Iroh in the back. Iroh's response when Zuko was on his knees begging and crying, his response was to love Zuko unconditionally and just accept him and hug him, and he's crying. I'm crying just thinking about that because that scene is such a punch in the gut. I love this man. We all need an Uncle Iroh in our lives. So next is Zhang Zhang. He's in the Order of the White Lotus, so I'll just put him in the I Have Tea with You because he saw through the Fire Nation bullshit right away, which, like, considering how controlling the Fire Nation was, more props to him. So he'll just go and I'll have tea with you. Then we have Jet, who I have mixed emotions about because I never liked Jet, even in like the beginning of his episode when they portrayed him to be like this good guy, because then the plot twist was that he's actually a bad kid. I never liked him. What he did was so shitty. People just deal with tragedy differently, and unfortunately people deal with it like he does. So in a way I kind of pity him, but because of that I don't know where to put him because I don't want to have tea with him, and I'm not projecting anything onto him, but I don't want to banish him either because I feel like in book 2, he was still kind of shitty. Honestly, I still didn't like him in book 2. I'm going to actually put him in banish because I just don't know what to do with him. Jin, the girl that Zuko went on a date with. You know what? She got him to smile and all that. I'm going to have tea with her. And I just want to know what her reaction was when Zuko came out to be the Fire Lord. Like, did the other nations communicate that often, like, to know who who the leaders are? Because can you imagine, like, Zuko being crowned and she's like, Lee, I see you, you know? The next is Judy. She freaked me out, so she's banished. Goodbye. And then we have June, I think her name was. She was a badass. I thought she was a badass, but we didn't see enough of her development, so I'll have tea with her. This might get controversial now. So next we have Katara. I don't know where to put her because honestly, I thought her as a character, she was a good character. I don't know why I think she wasn't great. She's not in my bottom 2 tiers by any means. I don't want to say she's not a great character because she was one of the very few that, first of all, almost took out, if we're talking about season 2, she almost took out Azula like twice. And then we see in, you know, the last ever episode of the show, she is the one to take down Azula. But there's just, I don't know, there's something about Katara where I don't want to put her in great. She's better than good, but she's not great to me. And I have no words to explain why. If I had to, like, I should have made, like, an extra tier so I could put people in between. For now, I'll just put her at the very, very front. And then, like, that's your way of knowing she's, like, supposed to be in between those. Boomy! And I kind of... Again, like, I want to take a life-changing field trip with him because he has to be 112 years old. So I want to know his knowledge. And he's an earthbending master. He's part of the White Lotus. But I feel bad for putting him over Katara because I do like Katara's character more, but... Oh well. Life-changing field trip. Ah, not there. Life-changing field trip. Okay, the Earth King, whose name I forgot. He was kind of annoying, but, like, I feel bad for him because, again, he was being brainwashed. He seemed like a good guy, but he was being brainwashed so easily, like, but he took such great care of his bear. So he's not good. I don't want to have tea with him, but he's not banished. So I'll put him in Am I Projecting? Okay, Avatar Kyoshi. Ever since the Chin the Conqueror episode, I've loved her because I just love how the gang spends that whole episode trying to prove that she didn't kill Chin the Conqueror just for her to be like, I killed him, what about it? Never said that she was the type of person to just kill everyone, but ever since the whole there is no justice, there is no peace scene, the whole fandom collectively decided that she is the type of person to just kill on sight, and I gotta respect that. She's a badass bitch, she's my favorite, I would love to fight people with fans. So she's gonna go in top tier. We gotta stand. Long Fang. My dude is a grown-ass man who got bested by a 14-year-old girl.
You've beaten me at my own game.
Don't flatter yourself. You were never even a player.
That says enough about him. Long Fang, you're banished. Ciao. Okay, this guy was the guy with the arrows in the Freedom Fighters, but like I don't remember much about his character. But he tried changing. Him and Smellerby wanted to change, which I respect. I'll just put him in Am I Projecting? May's next. I don't like May. I pity her. Again, the beach episode made me pity the villains. You know, I feel that she felt like she couldn't speak her mind in front of her parents. That's really, really shitty. When we were first introduced to her in, like, book 2, like, I just thought she was kind of boring, and the fact that she just gets bored by everything kind of pissed me off in the beginning. But I respect her for standing up to Azula in the Boiling Rock Part 2. And the other thing is that whenever I take these character quizzes, like, which character from Avatar The Last Airbender are you? I took 5. 3 out of 5 gave me May. And because they said, like, she doesn't show emotions easily, but, like, deep down she's a softie, which I would agree with. Would I agree with that about myself? I don't know. But, like, I got her 3 times. The other 2 times I get Zuko, but I got her 3 times. So, like, am I projecting? Am I just... Is 12-year-old me angry because she got with Zuko and not me? She's the reason I called the 4th tier the way I did. So, front and center... Here we go. So the next character is a name I don't remember. I felt bad for him. Here's this guy, not part of the Fire Nation, and the Fire Nation demands he makes these weapons. I've never been in a war. I've never been in a war zone, so it's like, what would I have done in that situation? And then in the Day of the Black Sun, when he saw his hot air balloons and his machines being used, he felt terrible about it. I'd have tea with him. I'd be his therapist, I think. Momo! I would die for Momo, and I thought he was hilarious, so I want to go on a life-changing field trip with him. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So next is Ozai. I don't think I need to explain where he's going. It still gets me that Mark Hamill is the voice actor for Ozai because he spent all of Star Wars fighting against the dark side just for him to like be on the dark side in this show. The duality of man. So next is Paku. He's another one I have mixed emotions about because he like pissed me off in the first episode we see him in, but I feel like that was kind of the point. And then Katara like changed his mind and we see him later, and again he's with the White Lotus. We love character development. The fact that he was able to change his mind about women and stuff, I'll put him and I'll have tea with you. So next is Pian Dao. This man was really fucking attractive. His voice actor, I don't know what the voice actor looks like, but by the voice alone, oof. Okay, so we're gonna have tea. We're having tea together. So this next guy, I think that's Pipsqueak. I'm gonna have tea with Pipsqueak because of his duties in the Day of the Black Sun. Then we have Roku. He pisses me off. Of the 3 avatars, he is my least favorite because this whole thing could have been fucking avoided if he had killed Sozin. Put your friendship aside and just kill the motherfucker. But then we wouldn't have a show if he did kill Sozin. Also, what if I was in Roku's place? Like, what if I've never been in a position where I would have to decide between my best friend and something that would make me lose my best friend. I'd imagine it's a very difficult decision to make. So, am I projecting? We're gonna put him there. Then we have Smellerbee. Her voice actress, I know her voice actress from so many shows, but then now that I think about it, I cannot name a single show. But she's another one. Like, she was all for Jet's ideals, but then we see in season 2 that she changed. Like, she didn't want to do what Jet was trying to do in Ba Sing Se, but she didn't have enough development for me to make a higher opinion of her. So I'm going to put her in Am I Projecting? So next is Sokka, my boy Sokka. My crush on Sokka was bigger than my crush on Zuko when I was younger, and with his hair down, 12-year-old Dom didn't know what to do with herself. Not only is he the goofy guy, and I love his one-liners, I love his puns, he was a really smart guy. Everything he did was meticulously planned. He was clearly I would argue he was more of the leader than Aang was, because Aang often did what Sokka told him to do. And he's always there for the people he cares about. And his character development when it comes to being a sexist pig, to the guy who's like, yeah, go women, we love to see it. Do I put him in the life-changing field trip, or do I put him in My Flame Burns for Thee? I think I'm going to put him in My Flame Burns for Thee. I'll put him before Kyoshi. Sozin's next. And I should not have to explain where I'm gonna put him, so here we go. Suki! Suki's another one that I feel like my opinion's controversial. Like, we love the Kyoshi Warriors. But personality-wise, honestly, she was just a good character to me. I shipped her with Sokka hardcore, but like, I feel, from what I know about Legend of Korra, ooh, they did those two so dirty. The fact that she's not mentioned in Legend of Korra, she joined Team Avatar just for you to do her dirty like that, okay. But, again, she's just good. I like Katara better than I like her, so we'll put her here. I'll have tea with you. So next is this kid whose name I forgot, and I thought he was so nice, and seeing how bad he felt for Aang in the Northern Air Temple when they saw that sacred room was destroyed, basically, and just for his efforts in the Day of the Black Sun, let's have tea. So next is the Boulder. The Boulder was hilarious, but he got bested by a 12-year-old girl. So I would not have tea with him, but I wouldn't banish him. So am I projecting? And you know what? I'll put him between these two. So next is the Duke. And I feel about him the way I feel about Pipsqueak. So I'm going to put them next to each other because they deserve to be next to each other. I felt so bad when they had to say goodbye. That was so sad. Toph! I just scared my dog doing that. Toph! I love Toph. I have no words to describe how much I love her. She bested so many people. Her one-liners, especially about being blind.
You've seen nothing once, you've seen it 1,000 times.
Just knowing what her parents were doing to her was really shitty, and her for being like, peace out. I love that. But then also I love the fact that she recognized that they were still her parents, so she wrote a letter to them. We never saw Hockey again, which I thought was really sad. And I love the fact that they made a disabled character, because she's blind, able to hold her own. I love Toph. I love how they did Toph. Her character development is beautiful. We're going on a life-changing field trip, especially because I feel bad her field trip with Zuko was not life-changing and she hated it. So I'll make it life-changing for you, Toph. So next is Ty Lee. And honestly, I'd have tea with her. I thought she was adorable and she's hilarious. We love her aura speak. I actually felt really bad for her when we were introduced to her because I thought the show made it very clear the only reason she joined Azula was because she is scared of her. She blew my mind in the Boiling Rock Part 2 when she chi blocked Azula. Like, she is the first person we see take down Azula, and I was like, what's happening? Like, Azula got what she had coming for her. Like, she spent her whole time manipulating May and Ty Lee, and May and Ty Lee were like, fuck you, but especially Ty Lee, and seeing how shocked May was, the look on May's face, that was the look on my face when I first watched that happen. I cheered for Ty Lee. I hope she's living her best life as a Kyoshi warrior, which I know a lot of people make fun of because of her little spiel in the beach, which that episode reminds me of The Breakfast Club, but like her little spiel in the beach where she was like, you know what it's like to be one of 7 sisters and we all look alike, that's why I joined the circus, and everyone's like, you said that just for you to join the Kyoshi warriors where you all look alike. But I feel like that was her way of accepting that it's okay to be like other people. That's how I took that. I don't know, I just love Ty Lee, and I'm gonna put her here in the lineup here. So next is Ursa, Zuko and Azula's mom. Ursa's hard to talk about if we're just considering characterization from the show, because most of my opinions are from what I remember in the comics. I have opinions about them, but it was made clear, it wasn't like explicitly said, but I thought they hinted pretty well that Ursa was also abused by Ozai. So I know the argument is that she's a perfect mom. She's either a perfect mom or you have like the true blue Azula stance where like, no, she was a shitty parent to Azula. And I agree with both sides. Except, so like the way I'm wording that is, I don't think she was a shitty parent. I just think she made mistakes and she was living in fear. If my husband was like Ozai, I'd be living in fear too. Because I think she coddled Zuko too much, but I don't blame her for actually coddling him, because if when a parent's kicking her around the way Ozai was kicking around Zuko, like, the other parent should step up the way she did. I just think maybe she did take it too far, because we watched how she treated Azula, and before I move on from that point, I do want to say, this is where I kind of disagree with Azula, with the hardcore Azula stans, because everyone's like, oh, look how her mom treated her. But also, if your child is saying the things that Azula was saying in Zuko alone, you should scold them, because Azula was, like, frightening there. But the part where I think Ursa maybe messed up there was not praising Azula the way she would praise Zuko, like, whenever Azula did do something good. Like, for example, when Azula was showing off her firebending to her grandfather, Ursa could have been like, hey, good job, Azula, you know, stuff like that, because it was made very clear in the mirror scene and in the beach episode that Azula didn't hear her mom say, I love you enough. So she could have, like, done that for Azula, and then we see in the comics that Ursa does love Azula unconditionally. But again, like, my opinion should be based on the show and not just the comics. But I felt so bad for Ursa. So I'm gonna put her in I'd Have Tea With You. Also, her voice acting in the mirror scene.
No. I love you, Azula. I do.
Chef's kiss. Whoever her voice actress is, that was one of the reasons that scene gave me such chills. It was her tone of voice and the way she said things. So yeah, I'm putting her in I'd Have Tea With You because I do think she was a good mom, made mistakes along the way, and I'm sure if she had a do-over, she would raise Zuko and Azula differently. So this owl guy, forgot what his name was, but I feel bad for him because I don't blame him for wanting to protect his library. So you know what, I'd have tea with him. And he's probably, like, super smart, you know, living in the library. This guy, whose name I forgot, but he was one of Toph's opponents. He got bested by a 12-year-old. He's banished. Yue. I thought she was sweet. Full props for her, though, for giving up her life to save the moon spirit. So, let's have some tea. Let's have some tea with the moon. We're gonna put you here. Okay, this guy, who was Toph's teacher, he cared more about money than Toph. And he got bested by a 12-year-old girl as well. So he's banished. And I'll put him before this dude because he actually acknowledged Toph's talent before he did. Hated Zhao, he's banished, but I have to say he is a forgettable villain. I always forget about him because I just thought Azula was such a much better villain. Even Ozai was a better villain than him. So bye, you're banished. So let's do some, like, rearranging here. I like the order of that. The order of that is fine. Appa's gonna go before him. And then Gyatso. And honestly, everyone else is fine because I feel, like, equally about them. Am I projecting? Yeah, that's fine. So this one, we'll put you two last. because you're really shitty. Ozai really fucked up both his kids. Fuck Ozai, y'all. So that's it. This is my tier ranking. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm staring at this. I want to change this order too. Okay, so Jet will go here, and then Hama. There we go. So now thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was really fun to do, and I'm really excited to do about Legend of Korra. Avatar has taken over my life. I'm going to leave it at that, and I will see you guys later. So if you are new here, just be mindful. This is not what I typically do. I typically talk about books, but if you liked this video and you want to learn about some of the books I read, please subscribe. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out, so stay flamin'.